This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
Now, this is the highlight of my day. I get to bring on a woman I've had a crush on for 30 years. We've known each other for a long time, the great Rita Cosby. Rita is, of course, you know her from Fox News. She's been on Newsmax. She's on shows on everywhere. She's been everywhere. And Rita also is probably most famous for doing the Cats Roundtable. When Rita, that's on what, 5 to 6 every weekday?
Every weekday, Katz and Cosby, 5 to 6 o'clock with me and the great John Katzimatidis. And we also have the Rita Cosby Show, 10 to midnight. But
wow.
And
so hold on.
John Katz and I get to have you.
I know. Well, I'm just so you're on the radio 3 hours a night.
Yeah, 3 hours, and it's an action-packed 3 hours, Steve, because, as you know, there's so much to talk about. But before we get started, Steve, I got to give a shout-out to you, my friend, because I'm looking up at the White House feed, and there is President Trump, and you're presenting all the numbers and that great news about the median household income going up. And I said, there's my friend Steve Moore. I was so proud of you.
That's so funny. I mean, I was telling the story a little earlier on the show. I mean, I was in the meeting with Trump, and all of a sudden he liked these numbers. He said, and all of a sudden he just says, let's just have an impromptu, press conference. And next thing I know, there's 40, press people and 20 cameras that are crowding into the Oval Office, and he's standing next to these charts, and he just says, "This is Steve Moore. He has some news for you." I'm like, "Hubba, hubba, hubba."
You did a great job. And I told you the day before you had a great haircut when I saw you in studio with me and John. So that's why I said, "Good, he got a great haircut, and he's looking good there."
Well, the Katz and Cosby Show is fun. I do it once or twice a week. It's just a fun environment. You guys are great doing the news. Okay, so the question of the day I've been asking all my guests and my listeners, and so I want to toss this one to you, Rita, is if you had 5 minutes of Donald Trump's ear, which I was able to do, I was blessed to be able to visit with Trump in the Oval Office, what advice would you give Donald Trump?
That's a great question. And actually, I've had great conversations with President Trump through the years. Yes. I'll tell you an interesting story. Very early on in his, before he announced he's running for president, President Trump and I were at an event, a personal event, and he said, "Rita, what do you think about Iraq?" We started talking about what was happening in Iraq. And, retrospective, do you think that was the right move going in? What are your thoughts? I was picking his brain. We ended up talking, quite a long time. And I've talked with him a lot through the years. I love President Trump.
Me too.
And I thought to myself, he's going to run for something big. I looked at him and I said, Mr. Trump, I said, Donald, you're you're running for something, right? And I said something big, and he smiled like the Cheshire Cat. And then, of course, the rest is history. And he went down the elevator, a bit after that. But I could tell. So the reason you ask, I think if I had his ear right now, I would tell him, to stay the course.
Right.
Because I do think so much of what he's doing is great work. I think also, I think he does need to figure out, obviously, what happens with the Fed chair seat, since we're talking on more money. Who's going to take that over? That's a big deal.
Now, do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite for that?
It's hard to say. I know.
How about our friend Steve Forbes or Larry Kudlow?
Oh my God, Steve Forbes or Larry Kudlow? Are you kidding me? Home run. And I think, by the way, either one of those two would absolutely be incredible. Yes. And I think any time to serve, even though they're both obviously doing very well, with their respective jobs right now. And of course, we've got Larry here at WABC.
I know, 3 hours.
But, and
Rita, Rita, Larry's my warm-up man because he's on from 10 to 1 and I'm on from 1 to 3.
That's a good warm-up. That's a great warm-up. So I think, first of all, I think solving that, and I also think keeping an eye, it's a hard balance, and it's an interesting point you said. If I have his ear, I saw him in the Oval Office, I think it was now March or April this year, and I popped in, he found out I was at the White House for something else, and he's like, Rita, come on over. And he gave me a huge hug. He's like, Rita, I love you. And that was a day where things were a little up and down with tariffs, because remember, it was still early on. And my advice to him there, as if he needs my advice, was stay the course. You're doing a great job. Hold true to your values. And I almost feel like there are many people who I would give advice to, no matter who they are, because I want the best for our country, and I want the best. But he doesn't really need advice. I feel like he is so clear on where he stands and what his mission is. And I think he's doing a great job. I thought at first maybe there were too many things on the plate between, obviously, with Russia and Israel and tariffs then getting thrown in and this. But it's actually shaking itself out. And he is a dynamo, as you know firsthand, and he is such a driver, and he's also such a good leader. Like, even when I was there at the Oval Office, it's been a few weeks now, and it was amazing for me to see sort of, just how present he is on any little thing, like telling Susie Wiles this. Steve Witkoff had just come back from a big major meeting, talking about this, talking about there were 30 or 40 different people coming in and out, and he was clear, he was crisp, and I'm not surprised that when he sees a great idea like you, he can handle it and say, hey, let's come on out and let's announce this to the world's media, as you so eloquently did. So I think stay the course. And also listen to his inner self, because I feel like he has a good gut, and there are a lot of people pulling at his ear, especially when it comes to Russia, Ukraine. That's a big thing, of course, coming up this week with that meeting in Alaska on Friday. Stay the course. Listen to your gut. Because I do believe he's one of the only people in the world who can solve what almost seems like an insurmountable problem.
So, great. Well said. Couldn't say it better. So 2 other quick things before I let you go, Rita. And I know it's a Saturday afternoon, so thanks so much.
Oh, you kidding? I was so thrilled to be on with more money. More money.
Well, there you go. There you go.
More, so, I love you.
First question is with respect to you've been at WEC for a number of years now. John Catsimatidis, who's a good friend of both of ours, and you're next to him for at least 1 hour every weekday. He's done an amazing job with this network. It's incredible. It's the number 1 talk radio network in the United States, and the turnaround has been so amazing. And I wonder, because you know him better than I do. He's a good friend of mine. He's the one who gave me the show, and I'm so appreciative of that. What do you think it is about John Catsimatidis that makes him such an incredibly brilliant businessman?
Well, you know what? He is real. And he really does deeply, deeply care. And I think when he's making investments, whether it's from a business perspective, he thinks, okay, obviously what is smart. He has a great intuitiveness. As we were just talking about Trump, I feel the same with John. He is so brilliant. And just to give people a sense, and you've seen this, Steve, because you've been with us. We love when we have you in the studio every week. But it's amazing to me, as we're about to go into the show, he's also dealing with an enormous, maybe major business deal, or he's dealing with some major world event, or he had dinner with President Trump last Friday, and here he is talking there with him about the border, about Mondani, about the world. I mean, this is a man who has such an incredible life story, John, and yet he's also so humble and so real, and that's why I think the show is such a great success. That the two of us really speak from the heart, and I learn something every day when I'm next to John and all the great people that we have in the studio like you. I don't think there's any show on the planet that has so many diverse. One day we have Pataki, and then we have Governor Patterson sitting next to him, or we'll have the great Steve Moore, and we'll have somebody else calling in from maybe Steve Witkoff calling in, or President Trump is called in, and I think it's a breath of fresh air in a time where people just want to hear the truth, and that's John's motto. It's sort of truth, justice, and the American way. But he lives and breathes it in every aspect of his life, and he's an extraordinary human being on and off air.
Well, I wish, and this leads into my second question for you, which, and by the way, he should be mayor of New York City. And unfortunately, it looks like New Yorkers may be making a very bad decision. I don't follow the race as close.
There's still time.
I know there is. So
there's still time.
Well, I'm in D.C., so I'm only up in New York once every couple of weeks. But I'm here to tell you, Rita, that I believe it would be a total disaster. I said this on your show the other night that I was on, that I believe New York will lose Wall Street if Mondani wins this race. And so what do you think? Do you think it's time for, I want New Yorkers to come to their senses and see how dangerous it would be to elect someone like this who could, I'm from Chicago. I saw what happened there when they elected a left-wing socialist. He destroyed the city. I don't want that to happen in New York.
Yeah, I agree. And, it's interesting. On my late night show, on the Rita Cosby show, I got a call the other night from someone in Cincinnati, and they were talking about what's going on with the mayor there. So there's a couple like kind of mini Mondanis across America. And I love that you care so much about New York. And it's also really a national story, too, Steve. Even President Trump is watching the race. Everybody's watching the race, because the last thing we want, like you said, is a flight of Wall Street and a flight of big business people like the great John Catsimatidis, who owns grocery stores. And here is a guy who's talking about, government-run grocery stores, talking about trashing billionaires. Yes. And then let's not also forget the rhetoric, Steve. What I think is so concerning, I'm not Jewish, but I'm a big supporter of the Jewish people. My father grew up right outside the Warsaw Ghetto. And when I see this guy who has a trouble saying why it's a bad thing that globalized the Intifada, and he's hanging around with Mahmoud Khalil, who is the organizer of the Columbia University protest, who had a hard time condemning October 7th the other day. To me, this is a cauldron for disaster, and this guy is a true believer. Like some of these economic policies that we're talking about now, and also other policies, Steve, this guy doesn't just say it. Like sometimes, you and I have met so many politicians, right? They dance. This guy is saying it, and he's going to do it times 10. And I believe he will be a disaster. So to answer your question, we got to educate people. We got to get out there, and that's what we're trying to do every day on the show.
Well, we got a couple months left to do that, and I pray that it's a good outcome. I'm not going to tell people to vote for, but I think people just need to know what could
Anybody
happen.
but Mondani. Anybody but Mondani.
Well, Noel Cuomo would be pretty bad too, in my opinion. But nonetheless, hey,
and who knows? He may not stay in the race. I think there's going to be some dropouts.
All right, Rita, we got to take a hard break. You are a superstar. Thanks so much for coming on the show.